Dave Zersky had texted me on last Sunday, a week ago today, and he said, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but you're out of a job here pretty soon. He's like, Xander not only did a great job, he got us out of here in time. So I don't know, Xander, you kind of set the bar a little bit high. But I do appreciate Xander. He did an excellent job. We're all super proud of you, and that was killer. That was fantastic. We've been talking about our cycle of loving our neighbors. It's the second greatest commandment, to love your neighbors as you love yourself. Just getting into the lives of our neighbors and loving them and treating them with kindness, compassion, like fellow human beings. Moving them to loving God. It's the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. And then moving people to serving others. I fairly often do like a demographic study in our area just to see what the needs are. Business people understand what church people are usually very slow to get. And that's that the number one key to a successful business is to find a pain point for somebody, to find a need, a pain point, a point at which somebody has some drastic or dramatic need or pain point, and to fill that need. To find a way to solve that problem. And we typically tend to be, as Christians, behind the curve on that. So I think it's important for us to look around and say, like, we live in Somerset County. What are some of the biggest needs? And begin with that. Not to start a business, but to be in the business of serving other people. We have an aging population in Somerset County, a dramatically, quickly aging community. We have far more older people than we have younger people who are being born or being brought into the county, which means we're a county in decline. We're a county with a large and growing aging population that have tremendous needs, loneliness, monetary needs, healthcare needs, getting access to healthcare, not enough people in jobs to help connect them and just sit down and go through paperwork. There are so many needs in this area. Drugs came up as number 2. Addiction recovery. That's a huge need. We have an NA group that meets in our church building every single week. A very big group too. We have usually around like 30 to 40 people who meet here every single week. And we're so happy that our building is being used for that purpose. But we need to think in those kinds of terms and not just say it. We need to actively seek people out who we can serve. Our theme this year is straining toward the goal, and our theme verses are Philippians 3:13 and 14. Paul says, "Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." And I harp on this all the time, that life is tough. We all know that. We sense that. We were kind of joking this morning for the adult class. I was asking for prayer needs, and there really weren't that many compared to what there usually are. And we said, I think Charles said, "Is this the calm before the storm?" I said, "I hope not." But sometimes, right, it's that eerie feeling like, wait, things are going right. That must mean that the storm is up ahead. And we don't know. We're not fortune tellers. We're not prophets. We can't look into the future. But one thing we know for sure is that life is tough, and we see it all around us. We feel it ourselves. And Paul wants to strain toward that goal. So in the context of life being tough, right, how many people just, if we're honest, like in the last, let's say in the last 12 months, how many of us in the last 12 months have at some point just felt completely, absolutely overwhelmed, just with life in general? The majority of us. We've got to, as Christians, figure out how we navigate life when life is tough. Here's a big question for today. It's a question for all of us. What am I doing here? And that can mean a bunch of different things, but I mean it in the sense of here on this planet Earth, we get one shot at life. That's it. We get one life here on this earth. One life. We don't get to be reincarnated. We don't get to come back. We don't get do-overs. We get one life here on this earth, and it's very quick. So the question is, what are we doing here? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? It gets a little bit complicated when we add problems. Right? Because life is short. We know that. As Enoch, the little weasel who bailed out on his birthday, reminded me on my birthday a few weeks ago, the first thing out of his mouth, he said, well, you're halfway to 90. Life is short. Life is like a vapor. James says life is like a vapor. It's here 1 minute and it's gone. It's a flash. And so our life purpose, the reason why we're here as God's children, as people who God knew us before He formed us in the womb. God knows us. God designed us. God loved us. God created us. What is our purpose? It gets complicated when we struggle with different things. Some of you are survivors of cancer. You're survivors of other chronic diseases. Some of you have chronic diseases. What's your purpose? Is it to make it until you can't make it anymore, then die? What is your purpose? Why are you here? Some of you may have houses that aren't in the best condition. Maybe your house has fallen apart. Maybe you can't keep up with all the maintenance and repairs on your house, and every time you fix something, 5 other things break. And you feel like all you're doing is you're chasing. Alex, you're here today. Why?
Kids needed a break, so Elizabeth needed a break so that her dad can fix stuff in her house.
Your house is broken, right? He came in and he's like, yeah, I don't think your foot's supposed to go through the shower. Right? Things break. And when things break, it's like 10 other things are just lined up ready to break. And you can't keep up financially. You can't keep up physically. It's exhausting. And I think a lot of people are just struggling to keep up with maintaining a home where the roof doesn't leak and the walls aren't getting moldy from water damage. Look how many people lost their homes in the last few weeks with these hurricanes that came through. I mean, everything gone, wiped out. Absolutely gone. They're homeless. Thousands of people are homeless right now. We have a housing crisis in this country. Finding housing it's tough. Is your purpose to just kind of struggle till you can't struggle anymore and then die? Maybe your vehicle is not the greatest, and yes, that is a battery-operated drill that's on the back of this. That is the coolest homemade little fake razor that I've ever seen. Maybe some of you are driving around pieces of garbage that just like duct tape is your best chance at holding that thing together because you can't afford a new vehicle or a newer vehicle. We've been there. We've had cars that we just piece together till you just can't piece that thing together anymore. Every one of our vehicles has gotten anywhere from 300 to, I think the most we got was 418,000 miles out of a car till the body finally rusted out. We milk them to the very end. Is your purpose to just struggle and struggle and struggle while you're watching other people pull up in their, Z71 Corvettes, huh, Cameron? Cameron's car there, the Corvette. What about school, right? Education. Look how happy these kids look. and I saw this picture and I was like, man, talk about a lack of purpose. Like, you look and the teacher's gone. And I'm like, did this teacher just go to the bathroom and never come back? Like, do you ever feel that way at your job? You show up day after monotonous day, and you're like, what if I just didn't show up today? And then the next day and the next day, and just kind of slowly fizzled out. Yeah, maybe some people would want to get fired. Right? There are people who they just feel stuck at their jobs, and they're like, this job has no meaning in my life. Yeah, it's a paycheck, but I am spending 40 to 60 hours a week just grinding and grinding and grinding. What is my purpose? Maybe you are homeless. Maybe you're living out on the streets holding a can. I don't know how these people got a picture of my foot, by the way. It's just, how'd they sneak that in there? Maybe think about homeless people, right? Like, do you think they wake up every day and they're like, man, am I just full of purpose, and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to change the world today? Or do you think they're asking that same question day after day after day? How did I get here, and what is my purpose? I'm just trying to get the next meal. I'm digging in dumpsters trying to find food to survive, to make it to the next day. And that's their life, day in and day out. Our homeless population in Somerset County has grown astronomically. We have a very large homeless population right here in our own backyard. And it's growing. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. Every single minute of every single day, the homeless population is growing. I'll take that nasty foot picture off of there. And before we get into our text, just to give it a little bit of the background, today's sermon is that God rewarded Joseph's faithfulness. And I don't want us to read the text of Joseph and be like, well, Joseph knew, he had this dream, and so he had the dream of his brothers bowing down. And remember that? Like, Joseph made the mistake of telling his brothers what his dream was. That was a rookie mistake. If your brothers are bowing down to you in your dream, don't tell your brothers that. Keep it to yourself. There are certain things that we probably ought to just keep to ourselves. That would have been one of them. But Joseph's brothers got very jealous about that, and they literally tried to kill him. And then one of his brothers said, no, we don't want his blood on our hands. Let's not kill him, let's throw him in the cistern. And we'll make it look like he died. And they took the coat of many colors, and we all know the story. They dip it in blood, goat's blood, and they make it look like he got shredded by a wild animal. They tore the coat, brought it back to their father. They're like, oh my goodness, we were out, and next thing we know, Joseph, he's gone. And he didn't survive. Magically, there's no body, but they didn't think that one through too well. But then they go back and they end up selling him into slavery. Like, what stand-up brothers, What stand-up people? Can you imagine Joseph, though? Put yourselves in the shoes of Joseph. And imagine you're young, you're talented, you're loved by your family, or so you thought, and next thing your brothers turn on you and they sell you into slavery, literally. And you're shipped off. He's shipped off to a foreign country. He goes to Egypt. Well, then somehow, like through a chain of events, he ends up serving Potiphar. And then the whole thing with Potiphar's wife, right? Like, it's this bizarre circumstance, and she makes it look like Joseph attempted to take advantage of her, and he gets arrested. And this goes on for years. Joseph was in prison for a long time, literally just rotting away. And do you think Joseph ever sat and thought, God, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I love the story of Joseph because it's, in so many ways, it's so relatable. If we actually stop and think about it, it's so relatable. Because he's just waking up and he's making it to the next day. Then, of course, there were the dreams within prison. And one of the guys beside him ends up being decapitated. That's not very promising. It's not looking very good. The outlook's not looking so hot for Joseph, is it, at this point? Then the other guy gets released from prison. Joseph's the one who interpreted the dreams. And what's he get in exchange? More jail time. He doesn't get released. Think about that. He doesn't get released for a long time. He's still rotting away in jail. And then eventually Pharaoh has a dream and people try to interpret it. And his closest people try to interpret the dreams and nobody can do it. And then somebody remembers, oh yeah, there's this guy that I spent time in prison with. He's pretty good at interpreting dreams. So Pharaoh goes. Joseph says, I'm not the one who interprets dreams. Who's he give credit to? Amazingly, who's he give credit to? God. God's the one who interprets dreams. This is what the dream means. There are going to be 7 years of famine, severe famine, bad famine, that are on the heels of the 7 years of abundance. We're going to have 7 years of great, tremendous growth in all the fields, and that's going to be followed by this severe famine. People are going to be dying everywhere. Pharaoh says, you're the man. You're second in command. Anything in my kingdom that you want, that you need, it's yours. And Joseph quickly rises to the status, this nobody from nowhere. And do you think Joseph at that moment was like starting to come into focus what my purpose is? And maybe it's just to keep people alive. I don't think Joseph had the foreknowledge to know that his brothers were going to come into Egypt and there was going to be this reuniting. I don't think he knew that. I honestly don't. I don't think we should read that into the text, that Joseph had that knowledge, that foreknowledge. I think Joseph was just grinding every single day from the day that his brothers did what they did up until this point. I think Joseph is just living every single day saying, I don't know exactly what my purpose is, but I'm going to be faithful to God. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to eat what food I can find. And I'm going to be faithful to God. I'm going to trust Him. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how difficult that is? Do you know how many Christians are walking away from Christianity right now? I mean, renouncing Christianity forever for much less than what Joseph is going through. And I'm not pointing fingers at them. Life is tough. People are going through some things. And there are people leaving Christianity instead of waiting it out. And I wonder how many millions of people, if they would have just waited it out and said, I am going to be faithful to God no matter what. I don't know what my purpose is, but one day that purpose is going to come into focus and I'm going to know God's plans for me. How many people have left church because they didn't get out of church what they thought they wanted to get out of church, or it's whatever? How many of those people, if they would have stayed, if they would have remained faithful, if they would have just waited it out, how many of those people could be serving thousands or even tens of thousands of people for God and for His kingdom? And so Joseph ends up collecting all this food. He's like, build these storehouses, build them all over Egypt. And these storehouses were so full that they couldn't keep grain anymore. I mean, it was that productive for 7 years. And then the famine hit, and it was a famine. I mean, countless lives were being lost. And then we know the story. His brothers come into Egypt, and Joseph, they don't know it's him. He's speaking through a translator. He kind of messes with them a little bit, with the whole money in the sack thing. He sends them out. They come back. It's this whole big ordeal. And then they come back the final time, and I love this account of what happened. This is Genesis 45, starting at verse 1. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Can you imagine what was going through their minds? After putting him through the hell that they put him through, after selling him into slavery, and now all of a sudden he rules Egypt. He literally holds their life or death in his hands. Literally. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." To what? To chop our heads off? I mean, it's probably what they were thinking. And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves." Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just incredible? Like, the first thought on his mind is he didn't want his brothers to be upset with themselves. Don't be upset with yourselves. Don't be angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Now, I don't want people to twist this and be like, "Oh, God caused the brothers to do this, and God sent the famine and destroyed all these lives just to have some, abject lesson." I think what Joseph is saying is God used these horrible events. Like, they did this on their own free will. That's their own free, choice. They made the choice to do what they did. But God used that to save lives. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, "Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will provide for you. For there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and of all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. Do you think they, at some point, questioned, what is our purpose on this planet? I don't know if you're living in a ditch somewhere. We have people online. I don't know. I don't know what all is going on in somebody's life. Maybe you're struggling to poke holes, fingers in the walls in your house just to try to hold it together. Maybe life has fallen apart. Maybe you're at a dead-end job and you just feel depressed. Maybe you're just struggling with life in general. Maybe you're depressed inside. Maybe you're anxious inside. Maybe there's something within you that you've done that you haven't forgiven yourself for yet. I don't know. There are a million different scenarios. But I want to encourage you to be faithful. Because whatever you're going through in your life right now, God and only God can redeem that. God can turn hurt and pain into focus and ministry. Our family, absolutely is living proof of this. That's not about me, it's not about us, but you want to talk about just living hell multiple times over. Things that we've gone through, things that we've experienced, and yet we remain faithful. And we try to the best of our ability to use that to comfort other people, to bless other people, to share with other people and tell them, like, we don't shy away from the things we go through. But we remain faithful to God in the hopes that that helps somebody else. God's purpose for us, no matter where you're at, I'm not saying you need to quit your job because it's a horrible job. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying open your eyes like Joseph did to what God has purposed for you. Be faithful to Him even when it's confusing, even when you don't understand, even when you're just trying to push through to the next day. Be faithful to God and ask Him with purpose what your purpose is. Be intentional about that. Because life is short. Don't spend your life wasting it away, hoping that something would have come along when it was right in front of your face the whole time anyway. God uses so many people like Joseph, like you, like me. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things all the time. We have limited time on this earth. Let's use it wisely. Let's use it for God. Let's use it well. Let's use it with each other. Let's come together. Encourage people who aren't here. I look out, every week I look out and I'm like, man, there are a lot of empty seats for people who should be here. I don't know why they're not here. But maybe something's going on in their life. Reach out to them. Let them know that you want them here. Maybe they haven't heard that for a while. Maybe they're like, if I'm not here, nobody notices anyway because nobody says anything. Say something. Reach out to people, call them, talk to them, bless them, encourage them to be here with us. Let's use our time here on this earth for God's kingdom. God has a purpose for each and every one of you. If there's anybody this morning who's not yet taken that step to put Christ on in baptism and you're ready, or if you have prayer needs, we'd encourage you to come forward as we all stand and sing the song together.